ผมเชื่อว่าผู้เข้าอบรมส่วนใหญ่เนี่ยเข้าใจสังกฤษดีอยู่แล้วนะก็เลยก็ขอเป็น one language ไม่ต้องเป็น dual นะ First of all, I'd like to introduce the Excellency Mr. Kirabarsky. On behalf of ATOC members, I would like to extend our appreciation towards your generosity on giving us lectures on Russia and Thai trade relations, which has been existing for a number of years. Russia and Thailand has long been established diplomatic ties since King Robert V and has been strengthened since then on, for which we truly believe we can work hands in hand to build up wealth between our two nations. Prior to his professionalism, he has a lot of expertise, language, especially Mandarin, fluent both conversation and written, even songwriters, perhaps write poetry too. Education background, he got honorary PhD on international relations, graduated from Moscow State University in 1989, and another PhD again in Chinese history. He knows quite so well about Chinese culture and history. Working experiences has been a special envoy on behalf of Russian President, SCO. I think this, you probably have to tell us more what it stands for, SCO. Okay. It's something about Russia-China collaboration dialogues. Could it be something like that? And he is fully knowledgeable in Chinese history, as I said, and culture, internal and external policies, together with many other security issues within the Asia-Pacific regions. He also a permanent member, appointed permanent member of ESCAP, Asia-Pacific in Bangkok, in 2014. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Excellency Kirabarsky, the Russian Ambassador to Thailand. Please.
Gentlemen, dear friends, Sawadika, I'm not a businessman, so maybe I'm not the right person to address you, because I don't have factories, I don't have land, I don't have assets, I don't have banks, but I represent in Thailand one small country up in the north called the Russian Federation, which seems to be a very interesting partner for Thailand for the years to come. And today I was invited to give a short talk to you on Russian-Thai relations and prospects of trade and economic cooperation between Thailand and Russia, Thailand and the Eurasian Economic Union. So the first question I would like to dwell on is why Russia? You have plenty of partners around you, China, Japan, India, the United States of America. Your Prime Minister is heading for Washington, D.C. these days, and I think it's very good. Thailand should have many partners, and this is one of the strengths of Thailand, that it has good relationship with everybody. But to address this key issue, why Russia? I need to say a few words about my country. So I will invite Dennis, my assistant, to browse through the slides that I prepared to you, just to remind you what Russia is all about. I said at the beginning that Russia is a small country up in the north. Of course, you understand the traditional Russian sense of humor. Russia is the largest country in the world. It has the longest borderline among all world nations. It is surrounded by, believe it or not, 18 neighbors. Its territory spans over 9 time zones. So when it is morning in the western part of Russia, in Vladivostok, they already go to sleep. Russia is surrounded by 12 seas and 3 oceans. But we still import a lot of fish and seafood from Thailand because all of our seas are cold. We don't have tropical seas like you. And in Russia we have millions of rivers and thousands of lakes. Russia is very rich in natural resources. In terms of the deposits of natural gas, we are number 1. We are the largest world territory covered by forests, so we have abundant timber resources. Russia has enormous freshwater resources. They say that in several decades, water will be the most expensive and the most indispensable asset. So Russia has lots of it. We're number 1 in terms of the world production of diamonds. Number 2 in coal deposits. We're among top 3 in nickel and platinum. Number 6 in oil reserves, and number 7 in gold. Our population is not big, only twice as big as Thailand. But we are a multi-ethnic country. Of course, more than 80% of the population are Russians, like myself, but we have lots of ethnic minorities. All in all, about 185 ethnic groups. But some people say that if you take into consideration small ethnic groups, there will be more than 200. And of course, we have unbelievable religious diversity. We have Orthodox Christians, 86% of them, but we also have Muslims, 20 million, so we believe ourselves as a Muslim country too. And what will be maybe a discovery to you, we have 1 million Buddhists. And if I ask you a question, which city is the largest city in Europe by population, without a hint from me, you would probably not be able to answer this question correctly, because it is Moscow. Moscow is maybe as big as Bangkok, maybe even bigger, because nobody has ever calculated the true population of Moscow, with a lot of migrant workers and people who have not registered coming to work, to do business, or to have fun in Moscow. Well, you read the newspapers, you know that many economies are not in a good shape, including Russia, which survived a very severe economic crisis with the drop of the oil prices in 2015, and we are still very dependent on the export of oils. The income from this export constitutes a big part of our national budget. And of course, we faced a very big challenge of restructuring the traditional and outdated structure of the Russian economy. But sometimes newspapers may be misguiding, and if you take everything the Western mass media writes about Russia at a face value, you may be driven to wrong conclusions, because although Russia is a rising star, we're still climbing up. But Russia is number 6 world economy. Don't forget about this. And the recent developments in my country show that we are on the rise economically in many aspects. After several years of sliding down, we are going to demonstrate 2% GDP growth rate this year, which is very good to European countries and fairly good for Russia against the backdrop of the recent development. We have a very low unemployment rate. We have a very low inflation rate. We have huge foreign currency reserves. And in many areas, Russia is topping the list of strongest countries in terms of different aspects of economic development. I'll just give you a couple of examples. Russia is one of the most advanced nations in the field of nuclear energy. We have probably the biggest number of nuclear plants in Russia, but we are building nuclear plants not only for ourselves, but for many nations throughout the world. For example, in Asia, our biggest partners are China, India, Iran. In the region close to ASEAN, we are building a nuclear power plant in Bangladesh. We signed contracts with Indonesia, and we hope that we will be able to reach out to the Thai market too, because we clearly understand that Thailand needs cheap energy, especially if Thailand wishes to develop itself in a very fast pace, which is, I guess, the case. And for that, Thailand will need some unorthodox approach to its energy security. We believe that alternative sources of energy is the solution. And among the alternative sources of energy, nuclear energy is the most reliable, is the safest, and the cheapest. You may have heard about a spat between Russia and the United States, Russia and the European Union. They did not like our behavior, although we are an independent country. And being committed to our international obligations, we are designing our foreign policy in accordance with the national interest of Russia. So, like it or not, but Russia is Russia. So as a result, the European Union limited Russia's access to credit resources, banned the export of high technology to the Russian Federation. In response, we restricted import of European agricultural goods to Russia from Europe, the United States, and Canada, but not from Thailand. From Thailand, we continue import a lot of agricultural products, and in the recent years, the ratio has increased. Why am I telling you this? Because with these sanctions from the European Union, we focused on the development of our own agriculture, and as a result, Russia has become the biggest exporter of grain, especially wheat, the second largest arms exporter to foreign countries after the United States of America. We are a great space power, so we have the 24% of the world's space launches, and actually both arms business and space cooperation are among the areas in which Thailand is very interested when it charters its way of cooperation with Russia. Just to let you know how big and how advanced Russia is, we are a very educated nation. We have 900 universities in Russia with 4.5 million students. We have 2,700 museums, 580 theaters, and lots of cultural relics, which I hope you will visit when you travel to Russia next time. I hope that my lecture will give you another incentive to go to Russia one day. So let's talk about the foreign policy of Russia. What is so very special about our foreign policy? I think, in one word, it's independence. We are not listening to anybody's advice. We are not bending over anybody's under anybody's pressure. Russia, or at that time the Soviet Union, was one of the founding fathers of the United Nations. We are the permanent member of the UN Security Council. We have a lot of partners and friends around the world, including Thailand. But the closest partners are, of course, our neighbors. We have the union state with Belarus. We have a collective security treaty organization with the former countries of the Soviet Union. As the world, one of the world's largest economies, we are a member of G20. Of course, in G20 we have a very important hub, BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They are the like-minded countries which have a lot in common from the point of view of economy, policy, and thinking. And we are pulling our resources together to get better cooperation between ourselves and a better place in the international affairs. Russia has diplomatic relations with 189 countries, and of course our stand on international relations is very attractive to many countries who lean on Russia in defending their national interest or in joining efforts to combat international terrorism, extremism, drugs trafficking, organized crime, to fight for a better world. Let me say a few words about Russia and Southeast Asia. We are connected with lots of very, very old bonds. This year we are celebrating 120th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations with Thailand. Why? Because Thailand, at that time the Kingdom of Siam, was the first country in Southeast Asia to establish diplomatic relations with Russia, and we are very proud of that. I guess the Thai friends too. From the very early age, as early as late 19th century, we started to have regular trade relations with many countries of the Asia-Pacific region. China, Japan, Korea, and of course Southeast Asia. We supported the struggle of many nations for their national liberation, and in countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, they still remember the contribution the Soviet Union did for their national liberation. And we continued to support them when they got rid of colonial powers, Great Britain, France, the Netherlands, and it was the time when they were facing another challenge to build their economies, to re-establish their statehood. And of course they needed economic help, financial assistance, they needed professional personnel in many areas of economy. And I guess that without the help from the Soviet Union, especially after the Second World War, the 50s, the 60s, the decolonization period, it would have been very difficult for these countries to stand on their feet firmly. And we provided our assistance in industry, agriculture, science, technology, and education. This is why when you travel to India, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, China, you will meet a lot of people who speak Russian very fluently, especially among the older generation. Why? Because many of them received their higher education in the Soviet Union or in Russia, or were taught by instructors, teachers, professors, specialists whom the Soviet Union and Russia sent to their countries. A couple of words about Russia and ASEAN. We became dialogue partners in 1996. Last year we celebrated the 20th anniversary of our dialogue partnership. But our relations started earlier, in 1991. Last year we held a very important event, the third commemorative Russia-ASEAN Summit in Sochi, when Mr. Vladimir Putin, President of the Russian Federation, met all 10 ASEAN leaders, including General Prayut Chan-o-cha, and signed quite a few important documents with them. One of the most important mutual understandings they achieved during the summit was that Russia and ASEAN will strive for forging strategic partnership in the future. Our cooperation with ASEAN includes lots of mechanisms, documents that we signed throughout all those 20 years. In terms of energy, agriculture, disaster relief, medicine and biosecurity, education and human resources development, we are delivering on the promises that we gave to the ASEAN countries. Of course, ASEAN is not the only organization in Southeast Asia or in the Asia-Pacific region we are working with very closely. Our country is a member of such organizations as APEC, East Asia Summits, ASEAN Regional Forum, ASEAN Cooperation Dialogue, to name a few. A question was raised, what is SCO? SCO is a very important regional organization, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. It is a grouping which is composed of Russia, China, and 4 Central Asian countries: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. And from last year, it is joined by India and Pakistan. So now SCO is half of the world, in population at least, but economically wise, it is growing very fast. And of course, the main goal of SCO is to strengthen security and to fight terrorism in the zone of its responsibility. But of course, Russia at the same time is a part of Europe. Russia is big. It's located both in Europe and in Asia. This is why we are also members of lots of organizations and fora in Europe. And now, let me switch to the subject which I believe is maybe the most exciting to you as businessmen. Russia is developing itself, not only as an individual country, as an economy limited to the territory of the Russian Federation, no matter how big it is. Russia is a part of a big integration bloc, which is called Eurasian Economic Union. Eurasian Economic Union is a latecomer. It's a new baby. But the baby is growing very fast. I will ask Dennis to show you another slide. It started from the customs union of three countries, Russia, Kazakhstan, and Belarus, more than 10 years back. And little by little, the leaders of the three countries recognized the necessity to upgrade their cooperation to another level and to invite other stakeholders to join hands with them in the economic development and integration. We moved to another stage of our cooperation, three of us, the single economic space. We established the Eurasian Economic Commission, and then in 2014 we signed a treaty on the establishment of Eurasian Economic Union. And this new entity immediately attracted a lot of attention in the vicinity of the Eurasian Economic Union. But not only. It became one of the targets of negotiations from countries which are located very far from the Eurasian Economic Union. For example, Cambodia requested a permission to join the Eurasian Economic Union. Of course, when you are setting up something new, the biggest challenge is to stand firm on the ground and to develop itself into a mature international organization. So we are not in a rush to expand ourselves, although in 2015 we invited two other countries, Kyrgyzstan and Armenia. So now we are five, and we are building an organization which will be close to the European Union, for your understanding. We are working to build the four big spaces in the Eurasian Economic Union to ensure the free movement of goods, free movement of services, free movement of capital, and free movement of labor force. So these are the goals of every integration entity. And the Eurasian Economic Union is not an exception. We set up a supranational body, which is called the Eurasian Economic Commission. These are facts and figures about the Eurasian Economic Union, but I will not dwell on them now. I will leave this presentation to Kunmano, and he will share it with you if you are interested. But let me tell you a few words about the structure of the Eurasian Economic Union. We have, of course, the heads of states, they meet and they take decisions. Heads of governments are in charge of the implementation of these decisions. And then we have the regulatory body, the Eurasian Economic Commission. It is similar to the European Council and the European Commission. So the structure is more or less similar to the European Union. Of course, we have a lot of tasks before ourselves, and it will take years for us, for the Eurasian Economic Union to develop itself into a truly integration organization. But we are moving to this goal very rapidly. The Eurasian Economic Union is now in charge of several areas where the member countries don't have a say anymore. To do something in the areas like intellectual property, or I don't know, maybe foreign trade policy, customs and tariffs regulation, to name a few. The member countries need to coordinate the policies and efforts and to get the approval of the Eurasian Economic Commission. So this is why if you want to establish a free trade zone with Russia, you need to go to the Eurasian Economic Commission, not to Russia. We don't have this right anymore. We delegated this right to the Eurasian Economic Commission. And of course, we do a lot of work to establish these freedoms and of movements of goods, capitals, labor force, and services. Let me show you this chart. I think this is very important. Of course, we have partners everywhere. But while our cooperation, trade cooperation with the European Union is on downturn, with the Asia-Pacific region, it is going up. I think it's speaking for itself. We are reaching out to many partners, and most of our partners lie in this part of the world. The biggest trade partner of the Eurasian Economic Union is China. This is another important trend. But let me tell you one thing. Last year, the Royal Thai government applied for jump-starting negotiations on free trade agreement with the Eurasian Economic Zone. And we are expecting a visit of the President of the Eurasian Economic Commission this coming November to sign the first Memorandum of Understanding between the Eurasian Economic Commission and the Royal Thai government. That will be the first building block which will lead to erecting a big, huge building of our bilateral cooperation. So I think in several years, Thailand and the Eurasian Economic Union will sign a free trade agreement. And it will be easy for the business people in ASEAN and of course in Thailand to trade with Russia, because we will remove all the tariffs, all the obstacles on the way of our bilateral trade. I'm omitting details because I want to say a few words about so these are the countries which are lining up, which are queuing to sign free trade agreements with the Eurasian Economic Union. We already signed it with, see, the first one. With Vietnam, we established working groups with Singapore, Israel, Iran, India, Egypt. With Iran, I guess we will sign the free trade agreement before the end of this year. So that will be number 2. Where is Thailand? Not yet. Here. But an important thing is that we are negotiating with China. This is a very tricky thing. Of course, we cannot open up our markets to the Chinese goods in one moment, overnight. But we understand that we need some kind of progress in the trade negotiations with China. This is why we decided to harmonize the Eurasian Economic Integration Project with the Chinese Economic Silkway, or One Belt, One Road project. So with this, we will have a very strong and very powerful integration drive, which we call the Greater Eurasian Partnership. Look here, this is very important. Yellow is the Eurasian Economic Union plus Shanghai Cooperation Organization, red. Kazakhstan and Russia are members of SCO2, okay? And here is ASEAN. Is it impressive? It's the half of the world. So if we join hands, the Chinese One Belt, One Road project, the Russia's Greater Eurasian Partnership, and the ASEAN Economic Community, that will be a very powerful entity. And it will be a win-win situation for all the participants of this new mega project. Of course, you may accuse me of being a dreamer, but I'm not a dreamer. I'm a practitioner, and I see that if we go along this path consistently, if we combine our efforts, if we set the right goals, and if we apply the right methods, in 10 or 15 or 20 years' time, we will be here. And it will be a good thing for all of us. So before I will open the floor for questions, let me say that between Russia and Thailand, we have a relatively large amount of trade, around $2 billion US. Of course, for such economies as Russia and Thailand, this is not enough. We are aiming at 10 billion in 2020. This is the purpose which was set before ourselves by our leaders. And now we are trying to pave the way to this. And the composition of our trade is not satisfactory to us. Russian export consists mainly of minerals. You know what I mean. Oil. Russia is rich in oil, and Thailand needs oil. Oil refinery products, metals is another component. Machinery and equipment, very moderate. From Thailand, we import mostly machinery and equipment. Your auto parts, your microchips, your chemicals, lots of things. Agricultural goods, you want to export more. We welcome this, but this is a matter of negotiations. What is good is that Russian-Thai bilateral trade is growing. Slowly but surely, in 2017, in the first half of the year, we registered some 40% growth of the amount of bilateral trade. But the Thai statistics show 78 or 79% growth, which is incredible. So I hope that this will continue this way. And after we sign a free trade agreement between Thailand and the Eurasian Economic Union, ASEAN and the Eurasian Economic Union, the trade between us will jump to a higher level. So these are the figures that I've just mentioned. We're growing very fast. Let's keep it this way. And just to show you that the two governments, the Russian government and the Royal Thai government, were not idling. All these years and decades, we've been working very hard to establish the legal framework for our cooperation. We signed so many documents, and we established a very solid mechanism. One joint commission, the new meeting of the commission will be in January. 2 subcommissions on trade and on agriculture. 6 working groups. We are creating a favorable environment for bilateral economic cooperation and trade relations. We have Russian-Thai Business Council. We have Thai-Russian Business Council. We have Thai-Russian Chamber of Commerce. We have trade missions in Moscow and in Bangkok. They help to organize interactions between business communities of Russia and Thailand. How about direct investment? Well, it could be better. Let me put it this way. Could be better. But in Thailand, we don't have big projects. Maybe they will come very soon, especially in the field of energy. Together with Laos, we are building a hydropower plant up in the north. And Thailand will be the biggest importer of the electricity, as you understand. But in Thailand, we have many Russian businesses, mostly small and medium enterprises. They work in the fields of real estate, tourism, hotels, restaurants, food production, jewelry, but now more and more in the information and communication technology. They're not big, but if you pull these factories, companies together, you will get maybe $500 million investment. Not bad. But Thai business is going to Russia in big numbers. And let me show you this. You know these companies, of course, very well. The CP Group and PTT. These 2 companies have already invested several billion $US in the development of Russian agriculture and in the development of oil and gas resources in my country. I hope that these companies' example will be followed by other businessmen, including you. So with this, I would like to stop my short presentation. I hope it has given you a glimpse of what we have in my country, why Russia is important for Thailand as a trade and investment partner, and what the prospects for our cooperation are. I thank you very much, and I'm ready to take your questions now.